Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for O, happy up, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for O, you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Hana Packers Edition podcast. Today, Iowa joined. This is, for those of you from some behind baseball slice, this is like on NBA on TNT when Ernie does his EJ stat of the night and he actually has a sponsor. For once, we have a legitimate guest. We are joined by ESPN's Rob Demovsky today to help us kind of recap the first quarter of the Packers season as the Packers are on a bye today. And so, Rob, I know you don't have much time, so that's your intro, and we want to just say thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, guys. I'm glad we could work it out. I'm sure Joe told you that I ran into him before after a training camp practice this summer, and that's sort of how this all got started. So I'm glad we could do it.
You should have asked Wes, because I'm notorious for stalking Lambeau to find people that'll come on to.
Hey, I'm happy.
But yeah, we're grateful for you to join and all that stuff. And I'm not to inflate your ego or anything, but there are only like two sports writers that I really follow a lot on the socials, and that's you and Wes, because you guys seem to be more level-headed, more, based than certain other ones that I've gotten into Twitter fights with over the years.
I try to keep it somewhat sane, but every once in a while I'll lose my mind.
And that's typical. I mean, trust me, if it wasn't for Mike being the technical guy, I don't know how long this podcast would last, because I would just go on rants and call people out in white knight shit. But yeah, I try to keep, because like I said, you guys seem to be really based in all that. So I just, I appreciate the way you guys approach things.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
So Rob, just how is the beat popping? The Packers got off to a really exciting 2-0 start to the season, and the stove has cooled a little bit over the past two games, but how is the beat feeling at the moment in terms of where the Packers sit into the bye at this point?
Yeah, I mean, myself, I still think this is a pretty good to really good football team. Seasons they have ebbs and flows to them. The one thing I've sort of learned over the years, I think this is year 28 or 29, I can't remember, covering this team, and it's like you every time you think you have a team figured out, then something else changes and throws you for a loop a little bit. So, I'd like to say that this team is not, as no team is really a finished product after a month of the season. I think there's some things that we've seen that you probably would like. And then there's some things that, are of concern. And to me, the injuries on the offensive line and the offensive line production, the way they performed, is a concern. And, I do think tied into that, the running game maybe hasn't gotten going quite as good as it did last year. I thought they were really good on defense, and, I still think they are. Dallas sure lit them up, but when I went back and watched that game, I sort of think Micah Parsons' assessment was correct, that Dak was just really, really good in that game against the Cowboys game. I mean, they had pressure on him. They really, watching it live, it didn't seem like they pressured him much. Going back through it and looking at their pressure numbers, they actually pressured Dak quite a bit. He just handled it really well. So, I obviously it was a disappointing couple of weeks going into the bye, especially after the way they started with two really good wins. But I do think that their problems aren't catastrophic problems, unless, of course, we want to talk about special teams, which Matt LaFleur used the word catastrophic, right? But I sort of come to the point where, I'm not that I've accepted that they're always going to have special teams issues, but it does seem like certain organizations struggle at certain things. The Bears can't get the quarterback right? I mean, the Packers seem to not be able to get special teams right. It doesn't make any sense because it's different general managers, different coaches, different special teams coordinators, different players. But I guess if you had to give someone a choice to whether they'd have trouble getting quarterback or trouble getting special teams figured out, I suppose you'd choose special teams as the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, I know. It just digs deep because, the last few times, within the last decade,
Yeah,
yeah, smidge it to 11 years, you've seen special teams really bite the Packers in the rear when it comes to playoff losses. But
no
like
doubt.
you said, we're at this point of the season where everyone comes out with their opening salvo, and then it's all about how you adjust to the league
Yeah,
adjusting back to you. So really
no doubt.
curious to see how the Packers are able to get out of the bye. Rob, from your point of view, you're more of a, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always seen you as more of, even with ESPN, you're more of like, you're tied to the Packers. You're following more of a team, maybe a little bit
Yeah,
of NFC North around. So on a bye, what's happening for you? Like,
yeah.
the team's not doing much. They're not really officially practicing. What's a general bye week for you?
No, it's a really good question, Mike. Because you're right. Like when you cover one team, you don't really get to watch. Everyone always wants to ask me, well, "What do you think of this team? What do you think of that team?" Well, when your team is playing, let's say your team's playing in the early window at noon, there's a bunch of games going on at the same time. When that game's over in the 3:25, I'm speaking Central Time here. The 3:25 games are starting. We're writing, we're working, we're doing our TV hits. Probably not done until maybe 7, 8 o'clock at night. And if it's a road game, by the time you get back to the hotel, sometimes I don't get back to the hotel until like halftime of the Sunday night game. And then by that point, I've probably got a 7 flight the next morning to head home. I really don't watch a lot of football. So I would say, today I watched a decent amount of the Vikings over there in London. Watched some of the 12 o'clock games. Did get outside, enjoyed the weather. We're having 80-degree weather here, which is pretty crazy for October 5th. And then sort of just caught a little bit of the late games, the afternoon games. So, like it's sort of a chance to on a Sunday anyway to actually watch some games that you don't ordinarily get to see from an actual coverage standpoint. Like the last thing we had of access was Matt LaFleur's press conference on Tuesday. So, not a whole lot going on there. Kind of just taking the week to gather some ideas for stuff I want to do, as we get into the next few weeks, couple of months here. So it is a little bit of a chance to catch your breath, but it's going to be a long haul from here to the end for everybody, players, for us, coaches, fans. It's going to be a long stretch of 13 raw regular season games.
So I have a question for you about press conferences, and I've been notorious about this for the last, I
Yeah,
don't know, year and a half. And I understand from your point of view what the press conferences give you a chance to talk to, coaches, players,
right.
that kind of thing. But I've gotten to the point where I've thought maybe the press conferences have kind of become obsolete just because it seems like week in, week out, there's not really anything but like coach speak in them
Yeah,
or really just ways around not answering the
sure.
question, but making
Yeah,
it sound like they answer the
yeah.
question. And
Hmm.
you guys really do ask some decent questions. It's just we don't seem to get any kind of
Yeah,
answers out of them.
yeah,
Is that kind of the feeling that you get too, or is there any way that
yeah.
you would want to change that?
Well, I think two things, Joe. I think it's a really good question. One is that the broadcasting of press conferences all over the place have changed the way coaches answer, right? Like, I mean,
Right,
they always knew what they could say would get out, no matter what. But the fact that it's live streamed everywhere, I think, has really changed how coaches approach it. The other thing that I think people should realize is that press conferences, while they're the only avenue that fans see, they're not our only opportunity to ask questions. Like there's a
right,
lot of stuff that we ask off to the side. I mean, we get a chance to talk to Matt LaFleur, sort of in an informal setting sometimes, either on the way to practice, after practice, or quite frankly, I can call him or text him if, I try not to do it too much, but if there's something that I really want to know and need to know, so I think fans are like, well, you don't ask this question or you don't ask that question. Well, sometimes we ask those questions, just not in that setting. Um,
yeah.
not in a public type forum. So I do think you're right. I think it's a good observation about maybe the answers are a little bit more sanitized, I guess, if you will. But I do think there are other avenues for us to ask questions and get answers. And look, I work for a TV company now at ESPN, even though my job is still probably 75% or 80% writing. I still do plenty of TV, Sports Center, NFL Live, that type of stuff. But I can tell you this, that players, especially, give much better answers when there aren't cameras around. I mean, it's just, I don't know why that is, but maybe it's they feel like they're more relaxed or it's an informal setting. but in a one-on-one interview or a two-on-one or smaller group setting, the answers are way, way better than if there's 30 people with 10 cameras standing around a player. That's just, I don't know why that is. That's just the way. And, oftentimes, we'll wait out the TV cameras to leave and then sort of go in for, some follow-up questions. And
No, for sure.
maybe that's a little bit too much how the sausage is made, but that sort of, I think, gives people an insight into sort of how we go about trying to get answers for fans. And like, look, a lot of the clips that you see are from big group interviews or big press conference settings.
Right. And that's what I said. You guys do have a lot of questions that you've got to ask because, that's your job to get the information so you can produce what you produce. And, I've tried to sit there and listen to press conference after press conference, and it's just, it gets to the point where I can almost repeat what they're going to answer in that question.
Yeah, we all have our own way of asking questions, too. I mean, look, I try to be short, to the point, and blunt. Like, other people have longer-winded questions. I mean, I'm not going to mention any names, but those
I
who
can
watch the
mention a
press
name because I
conferences,
find it hilarious.
those who watch the press conferences know. And look, I'm not saying my style's right and somebody else's
Right.
style is wrong, but I sort of feel like, don't beat around the bush, just be direct, because you're not going to trick these guys. Like,
No.
you're not going to fool Matt LaFleur or Brian Gutekunst or Jordan Love or whoever into saying something that they don't want to say, right? And we used to spend, and maybe still do, amongst the beat writers, we'll spend some time go, how are we going to get an answer to this question? And the bottom line is, if they don't want to answer it, they're not. It doesn't matter how we ask it, they're not going to answer it. So I try to, just, hey, I'm going to ask my question directly, be blunt. I don't like playing games, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
And that's why I can follow you and Wes a lot more, but just because, not to take anything away from anybody else. I
Yeah.
know, I'm pretty sure I know the person you're talking about, and you won't say the name, but I'll say it just because I enjoy his stuff. It's just I get what you're saying with what he does, and sometimes it's one of those where you can obviously tell he's trying to trick a
Yeah.
question into it, and he'll have this like long-winded lead
Yeah.
up to it, and it's great. I find that's probably the entertaining part of
Yeah,
the press
and I got a lot of
conferences.
respect for everybody on the beat. I mean, look, I've been doing this 1997 was my first season. I got into this because I didn't want to do math. So there is no math in journalism. So you tell me how many seasons I've been doing this. But I started in
28.
1997. I started in 1997. So there are at least three people on the Packers beat that have been doing it longer than I have. Tom Silverstein from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel has been covering the team since the 80s. Pete Doherty from the Green Bay Press Gazette, my former colleague, who does a great job as a columnist now. He started covering the Packers in 1994, and Jason Wilde's got 1 year on me. He started in 1996. So, like, there's a lot of guys that have been around this team a long, long time, and there's some great new people too. Matt Schneidman from The Athletic does a really good job. You mentioned Wes Hodkiewicz, Mike Spofford, Jim Polzine from the Madison paper comes up, Paul Brettel, newer reporter, Bill Huber. Nobody writes more stories than Bill. Works for SI. So I think it's a good mix of people on the beat that fans get an opportunity to get different aspects, different angles. At ESPN, we don't write every day. We write maybe a couple times a week, so it's a little bit more bigger picture, trying to cover the team from a national perspective. Like, I like the minutia. I would love to be able to write about, hey, here's who the number 7 and 8 offensive linemen are. But if I turned that story in, my editors at ESPN would be like, we don't care about this. So it's a little bit of a different, we all have different jobs to do. And I think ESPN, our philosophy in covering the team is that we're covering a local team from a national perspective.
Just leave that to us podcasters. We'll talk about the 7 and 8 linemen and
Yeah. It's important though, man. Especially, that's the one thing I realized when I started covering the Packers early on, is that Packers fans are super educated about the team. Like, I mean, more so than a lot of fan bases. I'll never forget my first sort of realization about how much people cared about this team and the minutia of it is, I think it was after my first year. Craig Hentrick was the punter, signed with the Tennessee Titans in free agency. If I'm not mistaken, he was the first $1 million punter. We put that on the front page of the Green Bay Press-Gazette, not the front page of the sports section, the front page of the newspaper, like a punter leaving town, right? Like going to another team. Like that was sort of, I was like, wow, I'm covering something that people really, really care about.
I might actually remember that. I probably could have had a copy of that back in the day. I just don't know wherever it ended up, because my grandparents lived in Sheboygan for all my life.
Yeah.
So we would get like the Sheboygan Press, I think it was called,
Right.
and the Green Bay Gazette and all that stuff. Because there for the longest time on my wall were they would print like full length poster size of each player, and so I would have that lined up. But so let's go ahead and continue with our look into the past 4 weeks. Obviously, the big acquisition, the whole offseason by anybody you could argue, was Micah Parsons. This is kind of going to be a two-parter, so take it however you need to take it. One, how do you rank the Parsons acquisition amongst other big-name ones that you have? And do you think he's changed the locker room in any way coming over from the way he did and the type of player he is?
Yeah. For the first part, Joe, I was here. Reggie Wright was already here, and Favre was already here when I got here. But I know what those things did to this franchise. I mean, the team, as you guys know, was so down for so long, and those guys just brought an instant credibility. Guys like Charles Woodson, Julius Peppers was a massive, even though they ended up not winning a Super Bowl with him. It was a big impact here. And there's been big impact signings that have not worked out, right? Like Jimmy Graham, Martellus Bennett, some of those.
What's the old one, Mike? Joe Johnston?
Oh, I forgot about that. They paid a lot. Defensive lineman, right? They paid a lot of money for him. I totally forgot that. Yeah. I think that was Mike Sherman when he was GM. But the Micah Parsons thing, I mean, it's right up there. It really is, with some of the biggest moves they've made since I've been covering them, and that includes drafting Jordan Love and trading Aaron Rodgers and going through all the Rodgers, saga and the Favre stuff. It's probably, if I was ranking the top 10 biggest stories or biggest storylines, Micah Parsons would definitely be on the list. I think that your second part of the question is the most important aspect of this. Is it brought an instant energy to the locker room. It brought sort of a realization among the players that the organization really believes this team is Super Bowl capable, and this is a move to sort of put them over the top if that's what's needed. And I also just think that guys, especially when you're an organization that doesn't bring in a ton of veterans, they pick their spots, right? Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs, or 2 years ago. It's incredible to watch how the young players, guys that are just trying to make their way in the league and sort of maybe even becoming star players, like a Jaden Reed, for example, how much they look up to those guys, like Micah Parsons, like Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney. That's a real thing. That's a real feeling in the locker room. And we don't even see what goes on outside of the locker room, but when the guys are on their own. I wrote a story a week or so ago about how competitive Micah Parsons is, and him and Josh Jacobs and Mecole Hardman went bowling, and they were competitive. This wasn't just a bunch of guys throwing beers back and goofing around. It was competitive. Tucker Kraft and Micah have been playing these ping pong games in the players' lounge that have gotten pretty competitive. Colin Oliver, the rookie who hasn't even played yet for the Packers, but he was telling me about how the games of horse, shooting baskets with Micah Parsons, are the most intense things that he's ever been involved in. And I just think that has an impact. You can't measure that, right? You can measure how many pressures a guy gets or how many sacks he gets, but the impact on other guys and the mood and all that, you can't measure that. I think that's just an extra thing that is a real thing, though.
From your point of view, Rob, so for us mere mortals, that had to be one of the weirdest trades to follow because, Joe and I, our attitude was there's no reason to get hyped up about it because there's no way, no reason for Parsons to get dealt. And I think this was the first time where the really smaller media members who were sort of trailing the Parsons saga kind of ended up coming up because coming up with the scoop on it, because I can't remember the last time anyone of anywhere near this caliber player of Parsons got completely by any of like anyone from your tier
Yeah,
of reporter, or and then much less like Rappaport or
yeah,
that tier where it's like,
yeah.
Rappaport the 2 days before is like he's still giving the answers that it's like, oh yeah, if he's available, Green Bay should
Right.
be in the
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
From your point of view, how surreal was it
yeah,
when like the stars really did start to align and it
yeah,
became really clear from Wednesday
yeah,
afternoon, I guess, for you, that oh my god, this thing is actually going to happen,
yeah.
or might happen to going to
And to
happen.
kind of add on to his question, are you watching Reddit now from now on for some of the news?
Is that where the rumors first started? I did not know
Well,
that.
actually, it was more than a rumor, and this has happened twice so far. The Devontae trade was broke on Reddit
Okay,
because somebody went and posted that my barber is the same barber that Devontae
okay,
goes to, and
yeah,
Devontae saying this is what's going on.
okay,
And then with the next day, that's exactly what happened.
yeah,
The same thing happened with Micah, that somebody posted
yeah,
something saying,
right.
I have this physical trainer who works for such and such, and he
Oh,
knows
really?
what's going
Okay.
on. And so,
Yeah. The only thing I wonder about that, Joe, is how many, for every one or two that are right, how many aren't even like, so I guess when you
right,
say they broke it, okay, they broke it maybe, but like it wasn't actually done until it was done.
right,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
to get back to the original point, I was quite surprised at first, because you just didn't, and it was only because you just didn't think that the Cowboys were going to trip. In fact, I was sitting with Brian Gutekunst on Wednesday. The cuts were on Tuesday, right?
yeah,
yeah,
Brian Gutekunst did his press conference on Wednesday. Thursday, I had a previously scheduled one-on-one interview with him and LaFleur. And Gutekunst was probably it was early Thursday morning. He probably already knew the deal was done. But I was sitting there and he was telling me, I just don't think the old man, meaning Jerry Jones, is ever going to trade him. Like, I just don't think he's going to trade him. And I think we all thought that, right? But I will say, and if you go back and listen to the press conferences on Tuesday, I did ask Gutekunst about it, and I asked it much more directly than someone
right,
else asked it before me about it, because I had at that by Tuesday I had already had credible information. No offense to the Reddit people, but from people that I trust, that the terms of the deal were the Packers had offered 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark. I was initially told that the Cowboys turned that down. So, but that was what I was told the offer was. And then we had locker room access on Wednesday, and I asked Xavier McKinney, whose agent is the same agent as Micah Parsons. And I figured Xavier must know. So I went to him, and he kind of looked at me, smiled, and he goes, I ain't touching that, bro. So clearly by Wednesday, we all had an inkling of it. And I can tell you this, the reason that our story was posted so fast on Thursday when when Adam Schefter and Rappaport actually finally reported that it was done, we had our story up almost instantly because we had a good feeling it was going to happen, and we wrote ahead of time. Like, I wrote probably 800 words with a couple of blanks in there because I had a feeling by then that there was a decent chance that it was going to happen. But it just, up until that point, it was a thing that, like we talked about, man, like they just don't do it. The Packers just don't do this kind of stuff. They don't throw away I shouldn't say throw away. They don't throw around first round picks like this. And the Cowboys, you just didn't think we're going to let them go. But obviously both happened.
yeah.
so to kind of compound on that, not anymore Reddit. I was just kind of joking with that, but they did post it, and it was so funny
Hot
because
sheets for a Men in Black reference.
immediately before the trade actually was announced and all that,
Yeah.
the original poster had deleted it all. So I don't know if it was actually a thing that where he knew what was going, or they knew what was going on and they had to delete because they got in trouble,
Wow.
or if it was just, yeah. But anyway, do you think with what the Packers are kind of going through right now, last couple weeks because injuries and all that, do you think the Micah Parsons trade has kind of hindered them in doing any other possible moves, or could there be some other moves on the horizon just to kind of, since free agency pool is kind of barren at the moment, do you think there's any other way they could move, or do you think they're kind of stuck with what they got?
No, I mean, like, from a financial standpoint, they've got. I'm just looking at our numbers here. I think they've got around looks like 12, depending on all the websites are different, but our ESPN salary information has them with about 12.5 million in salary cap space that they can still use this year. So if there was a player they thought could help them, I mean, it's not like they couldn't do it. It's just at this point, who's available, right? It's more likely you promote a guy from a practice squad or you pick up somebody on waivers. It's not. I don't think it's going to be anything that would be cost prohibitive.
Well,
Unless
I meant more like draft pick wise, since they've already given up the
oh,
two
I
first
see.
rounders
Yeah,
and they gave up the what was it, a
right.
sixth rounder for Kennard.
Yeah, I guess when we get down here to the trade deadline in about a month or so, I mean, I still think guys that are getting moved during the season, are getting moved for third, fourth, fifth, sixth round picks. So I don't think that would necessarily be something that would prevent them from doing something. Now, obviously, we know how much they like draft picks, and they're down a few draft picks right now. But yeah, I don't know that there's an in-season move. Like you think about some of the biggest in-season moves that they've made in recent years, they haven't cost very much. So I think you can do that if you want to.
Okay. Okay. Mike, you got anything else for him? Because we're going to have to wrap up here pretty quick with Rob. Did I lose Mike?
Nope. Okay, I'm here.
Okay.
No, just wanted to. Yeah, I think we got the big questions in.
Oh, we
The
probably should. We did get a Twitter question, so we
Okay.
probably should throw that out there for you. Let's see if I can find it again. Zachner from Twitter at Maxi Zahetner. Sorry if I butchered your name, but he's actually got two questions for you. One, who will be the special teams coordinator next year? And is Jeff Halfley gone, or is he going to be the new assistant head coach?
Wow. I would have, after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I would have said Jeff Halfley will probably be coaching the Miami Dolphins next year. Look, I still think, I think what happened in Dallas is not the norm. I think their defense is going to be really good. And I mean, Halfley interviewed for the Jets job, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
this offseason. And like, he's going to be a head coach. He's going to be an NFL head coach. He's already been a college coach. He's been outstanding since he's been here, and his reputation around the league is only rising. So I do think that he'll definitely get head coaching job interviews in this next cycle. It is a little bit, you guys know it's not the coolest thing to hire a defensive guy to be a head coach, right? Everybody wants the young, hot offensive coordinator who had something to do with Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, or whatever, right? Or maybe maybe that's now the Dan Campbell coaching tree or whatever. But I do think I would say there's a decent chance, 50-50 or better, that Jeff Halfley's a head coach in the NFL somewhere next year. Who has for special teams coordinators? I mean, I don't know. It's just, I mean, you go over the years, we go, we can, the list is long. I'm sure I probably couldn't even name all the special teams coordinators since they fired Sean Slocum after the NFC Championship game in 24. But
Kind
I'm
of
going to go.
reminds you
I'm
of
going to
that
go against.
Browns jersey that has all the quarterback names on.
Right. I'm going to go against the grain and say, and people probably won't like it, but that Rich Bisaccia is here to stay, and that this is not gonna look. Matt LaFleur does not like to fire people,
Right.
and maybe look, you're a head coach. It's part of the job, but he seems to not have a tendency to do that. So I'm gonna if you're asking for a prediction, people probably won't like it, but I'm gonna say that Halfley's gone and Bisaccia is still here.
Do you think if they happen to get rid of Bisaccia, just hypothetically, that they could possibly keep Halfley for another year or two by promoting him to that assistant head coach position?
No, because I think Joe, if there's a head coaching job, he's going to take it, right?
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I
got to keep hope.
There's only 32 of these, and people take jobs people take the Cleveland job or the Jets job or whatever jobs keep turning over because they think I can do it, right? Like that. These guys are, their egos are huge, but they have to be. Like, you don't get to the point, I'll never forget, quarterbacks that come in here that they brought in over the years, like that haven't been good anywhere else. Mike Holmgren brought Rick Meyer in here. Rick Meyer was terrible, but I guarantee you Mike Holmgren said, I'm the quarterback guru. I can make this guy good. And I just think that's the way coaches think. Like they don't look at it like everybody else who's taken the Jets job has failed, so I'm going to fail too. That's not how they look at it, and maybe they should. Um, but yeah, he's going to take a head coaching job if he gets offered one.
Gotcha.
Makes a
Well, I
lot of
got to
sense.
keep hope alive. It's we want to keep them. That's another thing I love about social media is everybody's posting all these horrible, quote unquote horrible things that Halfley's done, so it makes it look bad to other teams.
Mine was he
That's
doesn't return
hilarious.
his shopping cart at the store.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's trying to fake soil his reputation so nobody hires him. Wow.
And then they're doing the opposite with Rich Bisaccia, where they're trying to make him look even better. Like, he helps old
I have
ladies
not heard
across the
that.
street.
That's a new one. I like the creativity there. Hats off for creativity on that one.
Rob, I know Joe and I could go on and on, but we want to be respectful of your time. We just want to say thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us here today. I understand that it's the bye week, but I know that you've got a lot to do. Like you said, just getting outside to breathe in the fresh air every once in a while. So thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time. Hopefully we'll be able to bring you back on at
Yeah.
some point in the near future.
Sure.
But just normally we have to do the tell us where you're from, but Rob, just if you've got anything on the front burner that you can't quite say but want to slow release here, just let us know.
I will say this. I think there's going to be some pretty cool games coming up. Like obviously the Aaron Rodgers game is going to. I'm sure we'll have some pretty cool content ahead of that one. And I just appreciate you guys and appreciate everybody following along. And I know there's some people don't like us for this or that or whatever, but I've learned that that's probably just tune that out because there's plenty of good people out there that like you guys that are doing neat stuff and bringing content to fans. So I appreciate you guys having me on and appreciate you following what I do.
Well, like Mike said, thanks a lot, Rob, and hopefully we can get you in the off season some point when you get a little bit more time and we can. Hopefully, I'm hoping one of these days we can have like news broke right on the podcast with the writer or something.
Yeah, I mean, I keep checking my phone. There's nothing happening right now. But like you're kind of married to this thing, so you never know. I do see like I'm getting all the injury updates from Kyler Murray has now returned to the game. So nice.
Well, there you go, guys. That's our one update for now is Kyler Murray returned to the game.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Yep.
All right. That was great. Like it was Rob is definitely the biggest reporter I've talked to on any of these kind of pods, so it was really nice from him to take time out of his day. Yeah, like I said, it's always interesting to hear the perspective from someone who is like writing for a national, obviously ESPN has lost some of its luster, but it's still like
but it's small sections like with Rob doing ESPN Milwaukee and Green Bay and
exactly.
that keep companies like ESPN going. So we do appreciate Rob. Hopefully we can, like I said, get you on again. Mike, we're at 2-1-1, and you like to talk about how you want to win the quarter of the seasons. How do you think the outlook's going to be going starting next week?
Obviously what's happening, so Detroit is up 28-3 on the Bengals
God,
on
Jake
the road.
Browning has an arm, but he just cannot make decisions to save his life.
So, what's going to happen, obviously, amongst Packer fans, the transitive rule of sports, which does not exist, is, they've seen Minnesota put 45, I think, on the Bengals. And I forget who they played last week, but they got pummeled last week as well. And then I'm honestly surprised Detroit only has 28 points, almost at the end of the third quarter, given who Campbell is.
Bengals do have a solid defense. So you got to give them a little bit of credit. But when your offense can't stay on the field.
That's the thing is like, we're going to find out how healthy or not healthy, how much or not healthier this O-line has gotten over the bye week. That's really going to shape how they're going to do coming out of this. So you come out of the bye, you're going to play the Bengals, you fly out to the West Coast-ish to play the Cardinals, and then you're at Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. Those are your first three games, and, it's October, nothing's a must-win, but because you went 0-1-1 your last 2 weeks, you've got to start racking up wins again. And I the one that's been frustrating for me is I've seen people conflate the outcome of the Thursday night game between the Rams and the 49ers as like, oh, see, like, how would you feel if LaFleur, went aggressive? But I'm like, that's not the point. Like, it, you're using the final outcome to like justify an action when the reality is like you look at it and LaFleur when he crossed the 50 was like, how do I get a field goal with as little time on the clock so that Dallas can't go and win, instead of, okay, we're across this field, let's go score this touchdown and win this game. And that's the part that the two of us, we both went on our individual rants after last week's episode. It has been fun to see Joe cross both his personal and his personal Twitter, the podcast Twitter, his Blue Sky, just retweeting that I went on an impressive rant for once in my life.
Well, like I said, I keep saying this and I keep telling people this. Normally it's me who goes on these tangents and these rants and shit like that. To have Mike do it, you knew they fucked up.
Yep. So it's we'll see. I hate saying, doing the we'll have to see, but it's just hard to tell because if this team is healthier, if Zach Tom is fine and is actually able to play, a full game, that changes the calculus on what this team is going to do. If we're going to still have a super shuffled offensive line, then I don't expect LaFleur is going to open it up in any regard. He's going to play, as frustrating it is, he's going to try and get a lead and he's going to just try and get to the following week kind of thing. And, like I said, there's two schools of thought on this is, you get a lead and you just bleed the clock out, or you use your offense to effectively bleed the clock by, getting additional scores and like forcing an opponent to have to do the one thing that your defense is the best at, stopping. So, I mean, we'll see. Like you said, Cincy would be a good one to just get out and also flaunt what you can do on both sides of the ball because, to get the quote unquote, to get the vibes going again, you go and you just put your knee on an opponent's chest again and snuff the life out of them. Like, that's what we want to see. But in all honesty, I just want to see this team win and have a, relatively convincing win coming out of the bye. LaFleur has kind of a weird post-bye record where he's like usually fine, but every once in a while he'll have a clunker kind of thing and stuff. So, like last year it was the Bears game in Chicago, and that did help lead to a little bit of a run and stuff, but got to get the first one.
I just think that there's no way he can come out and do against the Bengals and have the same style of game plan that he did against the Browns and the Cowboys. Because that's just, again, that leads to you're only playing for the tie. You're only playing to not, only win by like a field goal. With the way that they're playing right now, this defense should be able to eat. I keep joking this is going to be like the Sean Clifford revenge game, that they're finally going to bench Jake Browning and bring Clifford up to the active roster, and he's just going to go nuts. But you can't lay flat. You can't take them. You can't look at them and say, we should be able to roll these guys. Come out, be a dominant team like we know you can be, and get the win. I joke with you about you using the quarters of the season and you got to win the quarters of the season. Well, if you're going to look at it like that, then win the first game of the second quarter. At least win that one. So
like I said, get the vibes rolling again. But, we're going to go back to our regular programming. We're going to have our opponent preview. But yeah, Joe was able to land Rob, which was a great piece for the bye week. Something different for once, and a good different in that sense. But
and this just goes to show anybody, if you're part of the beat or if you're part of the Packers, when I'm up there, I am stalking that place just to find somebody to talk to. You may be next.
So, like I said, that's my way of patting Joe on the back for his excellent work for the pod. But yeah, just continue to follow us. Please check out the website, ohanapackers.org. Carlos has been putting his best effort forward, putting out a lot of articles.
I
Check
think
out
he's
the
going
merch.
through school right now, so he's been kind of slacking a little bit when it comes to the art sections. But when he does put them out there, they are pretty good bangers.
So, in order to support all of us, please check out the merch section. We're continue. We have Joe added the Tucker Craft. I burned my opponent's house down. I burned my enemy's house down. Shirts and other.
And again, I say thank you to Don, because Don's been helping me clean up the images a little bit to make them more appealing.
So check all of that out. And all of the episodes of this and Cheese Talk Radio are on there. Please follow the podcast on social medias at Ohana_Packers on Twitter, at Ohana Packers Edition on Instagram. Search Ohana Packers Edition on Facebook. Please follow if you aren't. We want to hit the 100 follower count so that when we do our live streams that we can live stream there as well. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Give us a like, subscribe, and positive or negative comments. Just like Rob said, we aim to put out content for everyone. So whatever you got for us, please give it to us. We want to put out the content you're looking for.
And give a shout out here real quick, because I've been trying to catch up on any comments that are coming across our feeds on the podcasting notes, and we have had a regular come in through the comments, and I've been trying to catch up on him, and I want to find his name. Chris the Casual Inn, as he calls himself, but it's CNitch 290 on Spotify. Thank you for the kind words, and thank you for supporting us and sharing your feedback. We appreciate everything. Like Mike says, positive, negative. I may argue with you a little bit if it's too negative, but otherwise, positive, negative, we want to hear from you guys.
So with that, we say, Pack Go and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for Ohio. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for who wanna go.